The South Korea-U.S. key summertime military drills have been ongoing since last week, and these are one of the acts that North Korea has long been angry about. But the regime has been relatively calm about it this year. What's on the North's mind? For more, we are joined by Dr. Bruce Klinger this morning. Hello there.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, like I said, North is yet to stage any military provocation against the drills, which is always a good thing, but it also feels weird that the North hasn't done anything about it. Why is that?
Well, North Korea has been critical of the exercises, as they always are. They claim that they're a precursor to the U.S. and South Korea invading or attacking North Korea and say that it's bringing the peninsula to the brink of war. However, they haven't staged military provocations, which they don't necessarily do every time the U.S. and South Korea do exercises. North Korea's largest military exercises are pre-scheduled. They're the winter training cycle, usually December to March, and then the summer training cycle, usually June and July. And they could always do missile launches, but that has also been relatively quiet this year. At the beginning of the year, two analysts predicted North Korea was going to war. That obviously hasn't happened. But many of the rest of us thought that it would be a fairly bumpy year with a lot of provocations and military actions by North Korea, but it's actually been quieter than many of us predicted.
Right, and on top of that, North is also yet to make a comment on President Yoon Suk Yeol's vision for unification. It's neither welcomed nor rejected the proposal. Why the silence here?
Well, that's also a bit surprising. North Korea may have felt they already pre-answered President Yoon's speech on unification by announcing their own dismissal of unification earlier this year. Kim Jong-un gave a very extensive comments that the North Korean attempt at unification was over, that it actually dismissing the policies of his father and grandfather, and instead declaring that South Korea was a hostile state or a hostile other nation. So North Korea may feel that they didn't need to respond to President Yoon, but I would suspect that at some point they will more forcefully denounce that speech and also continue to reject any entreaties at diplomatic dialogue that Seoul and Washington and other nations have been trying for quite some time.
Dr. Klinger, a North Korean soldier defected to South Korea last week. Now, some experts say there is a gap in the area where North Korean soldiers lay mines, and some note that South Korea's playing up propaganda broadcast played a significant role in the defection. What's your take on the latest defection?
Well, the inter-Korean boundary is probably the most militarized border in the world, and it's really quite amazing that anyone could infiltrate it, but it's only in small numbers, certainly not an attack capability. But I think the broadcasts are very effective. A number of North Korean escapees who come to South Korea say that the broadcasts of various types are very persuasive. The South Korean broadcasts aren't necessarily strongly critical of the North Korean regime. Some of them are providing information from the outside world, but they're also just providing South Korean soap operas, South Korean music, and it tends to have a corrosive effect on the loyalty of the populace of North Korea.
Right, and shifting our gear to the U.S. election, upcoming U.S. election, both Republican and Democratic parties are yet to draw specific outlines for North Korea's denuclearization. Now, why is that? Does that mean the North's denuclearization is not their priority anymore?
Well, my Korean friends are always disappointed that in any presidential election that both parties aren't talking extensively about North and South Korea. And U.S. elections, like most elections around the world, are usually determined on economic issues. Do you feel better or worse than you did 4 years earlier? And this campaign is even less focused on policy issues than previous campaigns. They tend to be much more personality focused than policy focused. That said, the Democratic platform does talk about North Korea. It does talk about the importance of maintaining or strengthening alliances, including with South Korea. Initially, it wasn't as detailed, and it didn't mention CVID, but an election or a campaign official for the Harris campaign did point out that, yes, that continues to be the U.S. policy as well as would be a Harris administration policy. The Republican platform didn't mention Korea at all, but that doesn't mean President Trump, if reelected, would totally ignore North or South Korea or Northeast Asia. So it's just, we'd have to wait for one of the candidates to be elected, and then the administration would then fill out their policy platforms to a much greater degree.
Right, because at the end of the day, it is the American voters who will, take their ballots they take their votes to the ballots. Now, the question is then, do you think North Korea will actually speak up or become more active once the election is over in the U.S.?
Well, I think they will continue to be hesitant, if not rejecting entreaties for diplomatic dialogue if Harris is elected. The Biden administration has been trying for contact throughout the administration. And the last time there were meetings between the U.S. and North Korea was October of 2019 during the Trump administration. There's a debate as to whether President Trump would be interested in resuming engagement with North Korea. He talks about his friendship. He says that Kim is missing him. But I think President Trump, like any new U.S. president, would be much more focused on domestic issues, economic issues. And when it comes to foreign policy, I think he'd be more focused on China, Taiwan, Ukraine, Russia, and the Middle East. But I think the biggest catalyst would come from North Korea. If Kim Jong-un thought he could gain objectives such as dividing or driving a wedge between the U.S. and South Korea, getting military exercises canceled, getting U.S. force levels reduced, then I think then Kim might reach out to President Trump if he is reelected.
Dr. Klinger, thank you so much for your time and your insight. As always, you have a great evening.
Thank you for having me.